Howdy, folks, and welcome back. Hope you're all blessed and doing okay out there. Well, for today's video, I present to you Dome Car Magic. A dome car is a passenger car with a glass roof on top that was sent out for folks to look out and see. The story is amazing, and so is the history of it. This program is pretty cool. It's one of my personal favorites I have. Anyway, I'm going to let the program do the talking because it covers a lot more than I can about dome cars in particular. So here we go, all aboard for Dome Car Magic.
When I was a little girl, I had this great little model train set, and it had a dome car. And I had always wondered, how long they had been around, and how they came to be, and where they actually went, what places they were. And now I have a chance, finally, now that I'm 40 years old, to get on a dome car and actually experience it. And it is just absolutely thrilling.
For over 60 years, railroad dome cars have crisscrossed North America. This story tells how dome cars created a new sensation in rail travel. A sensation that continues to delight rail passengers today. Journey with us in Dome Car Magic. The idea of a dome car came from an inspiration Cyrus R. Osborne had on July 4th of 1944. Osborne was a General Motors vice president who was riding in the cab of a diesel locomotive. He was struck by the full view of Colorado's Glenwood Canyon and wished more people could see it from this perspective. Who built and operated the first dome car? Bill Kratville provides some history.
The first dome car was the Silver Dome, and it was built at Aurora Shops. They took a standard flat-top coach and put a dome on it.
It was Ralph Budd, president of the Burlington Railroad, who ordered his railroad to build this first dome car. It was completed in June of 1945.
The Silver Dome was the first car, and its original assignment was to a train which the dome wouldn't really mean that much, and that was the Ak-Sar-Ben Zephyr. That is a daytime train that operated from Omaha to Chicago.
For years, a monument to the dome car stood on the spot in Glenwood Canyon where Osborne was struck with the dome car idea. Even before Burlington's Silver Dome was envisioned, railroads were poised after World War II to innovate and improve rail passenger transportation. After all, the country was returning to a peacetime economy and had a pent-up desire for travel. Prior to the war, railroads launched either new or re-equipped trains with famous names such as Super Chief, Daylight, 20th Century Limited, Empire State Express, or Hiawatha, to name a few. But times were different, and railroads needed to explore ways of holding on to the passengers they had carried during the war. After the war, General Motors, in an effort to promote their diesel locomotives, teamed up with Pullman Standard to produce a four-car Train of Tomorrow, which toured the country in 1947 and 1948. Industrial designer Otto Kohler even proposed some dome car designs for future rail travel.
The Train of Tomorrow was, as you know, a very unique train. It was built strictly to show off domes and EMD with its diesel locomotive and so forth. It was supposed to be the train of the future, and it had all domes. Every car was domed. One of those cars, and I think it's the Moon Glow, survives, and it's at Clearfield, Utah in a storage shed. But it was a unique train, and it finally ended its days as the city of Seattle, running between Seattle and Portland on the Union Pacific. The UP bought the train.
Some consider the golden age of rail passenger service to have occurred between the late 1940s and mid-1950s. During that post-war period, railroads spent millions of dollars designing and purchasing new and improved equipment. Of all this new equipment, 237 were dome cars. The dome cars were built by three manufacturers: Pullman Standard, American Car and Foundry, and the Budd Company. The number of cars manufactured by each breaks down as follows. Pullman Standard and American Car and Foundry each made 35 cars, while Budd produced 167 dome cars. However, a few railroads, such as Southern Pacific, took on the task of building their own dome cars. Mike Davis explains.
The dome car that was used on the train in later years was perhaps the most spectacular dome car built, in that you sat on the standard level and had the dome that was 13 feet above you, and that was all clear space. And it made for a very striking car and a beautiful lounge facility.
In 1946, while the Train of Tomorrow was barnstorming the nation, the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad placed an order with the Budd Company for dome cars to run on their Twin Cities Zephyrs. The Twin Cities Zephyrs entered service between Chicago and Minneapolis-St. Paul in December of 1947. But this was just the beginning of the dome car explosion. More was to come, with the crowning achievement of a new train that was to set the standard for viewing America at eye level. Considered by many as the most famous dome car train ever launched was the California Zephyr. Starting in 1949, the train was operated from Chicago to Oakland by 3 railroads: the Burlington, Rio Grande, and Western Pacific. When the California Zephyr was terminated in 1970, a reduced version of the train consist operated as the Rio Grande Zephyr from Denver to Salt Lake City until 1983. The railroad's slogan for their new Vista domes was, "Look up, look down, look all around." No wonder it became the most talked about train in the country. Talking also took the form of ads on the radio. Here's an excerpt from one.
Good morning and welcome to Flight 741. I'm your stewardess, Miss Hanson.
The airplane, a great way to travel.
Kindly observe the no smoking sign and keep your safety belts fastened.
Nothing like the train.
If we have a loss of oxygen or pressurization in the cabin, oxygen masks will drop down from above.
After all, you take the plane between San Francisco and Chicago, and what do you see? San Francisco and Chicago. But when you take the train, the California Zephyr with the Vista domes, well, you see America, and you travel relaxed.
You will notice the escape hatches near the front wing and tail section. Emergency escape instructions may be found.
Businessmen travel with California Zephyr. The government puts foreign dignitaries on it to show them America.
In the pouch in front of you, you'll find a little white bag. In case the flight gets rough, feel free to ask your neighbor for his.
While the California Zephyr was making travel news, other railroads, you might say, were jumping on the bandwagon. Nearly all the Western railroads brought out new trains or re-equipped trains that would include dome cars. The dome cars came with many different names. Burlington had their Vista domes, Santa Fe the Pleasure Dome for their premier train, the Super Chief. Each railroad's marketing department and advertising agency invented names for their dome cars. There was the Strata Dome on the Baltimore and Ohio, Scenic Dome on the Canadian Pacific's famous Canadian, and Planetarium Dome on Missouri Pacific. Northern Pacific borrowed Burlington's name of Vista Dome for their name trains, while Great Northern called their dome cars Great Domes. Milwaukee Road outdid the Great Northern by calling their cars Super Domes. Some of the Milwaukee cars ended up on the Canadian National, where they were named Scenoramic Domes. These domes operated on the Supercontinental and Panorama. Santa Fe used 2 sizes of dome cars, the Pleasure Dome on the Super Chief, and big domes on their other name trains. As mentioned earlier, Southern Pacific operated 3/4 domes, so called because the dome did not extend the full length of the car on the upper level. Other railroads operated dome cars as well. The Wabash had their Bluebird. Various Illinois Central trains used dome cars. The Delaware and Hudson leased a couple of Canadian Pacific dome cars for their day train, the Laurentian, which operated between New York and Montreal. Auto Train used a variety of dome cars, and even Amtrak in the early years used conventional dome cars along with United Aircraft's Turbo Train. Riding the Turbo Train was similar to riding in a dome with the forward view. Union Pacific fielded a large fleet of dome cars. At first they called them Astrodomes. However, later advertising referred to them as dome liners, which really described their trains with dome cars. However, Union Pacific developed a new twist for their dome cars.
Again, Union Pacific Railroad leads the transportation field, this time in dome travel. Because Union Pacific and only Union Pacific has three kinds of dome cars. First came the Astrodome coaches with a revolutionary slanted seating arrangement for perfect viewing, extra wide windows and double capacity air conditioning. Then came the Astrodome Observation Lounge car, luxury on wheels, with its slanted divans on the dome level, its informal club lounge, and smartly modern roomy lower lounge. And now, first of their kind, the exciting Dome Diners, the only dome dining cars on any railroad. At middle level, there's the main dining room, ideal for the leisurely enjoyment of fine food. And for special events en route, a private dining room seating 10, featuring a gold table service. When you hear somebody say, "Be specific, go Union Pacific," you know you're listening to a wise traveler. Because Union Pacific always leads the transportation parade.
Keith Kirby shares some memories about his favorite dome car.
I rode in almost every dome car there was on almost every railroad that had dome cars, but of all of them, my very favorite had to be the Silver Veranda and its companion car, the Silver Chateau. These were the tail end cars on the Burlington 2nd Denver Zephyr. They were very special. They were observation parlor cars, just beautiful, beautiful cars, and on a great train ride.
The Vista Dome car, yes, was popular in the daytime for the scenery, but also a great place to go at night. You didn't have any lights inside the car. You could look out at the vast expanse of the Nevada desert, or going across the rolling cornfields of Iowa and watching a succession of red and green lights as the train sped across at 79 miles per hour.
It was a special thrill for me to sit in a dome car, especially near the back of the train, because you could see the whole train snaking in front of you. And that was especially true going through the Colorado Rockies, where there were so many tunnels that the train went through on its way toward the west. And it was a great thrill to see a tunnel coming and suddenly you're plunged into darkness.
I rode the Capital Limited, and that was neat because I was in one of their domes. And again, those were lower domes, and one of the interesting features about those cars were they had some spotlights above the door, and at night they would turn on the spotlights, and so you would get some night vision that way. It sounded like when I saw it in the brochures it would be neater than it was in real life. They didn't really light up that much.
Oh, it's the greatest thing in the world. A 360-degree view, very comfortable and quiet, pleasant going along at high speed across the open spaces of the United States. It's a joy, night or day.
You would think from all the nostalgia about dome car rides in the past that one could no longer enjoy such an experience. Yet dome cars still roam North America on various routes. Here are a few.
The magic of traveling in the dome car is that it's so unlike traveling in a typical rail car. In a typical rail car, you're looking out of a sheet of glass and it's like a motion picture racing by outside the train. Here, it's like IMAX. It's all around you. You can see from one end of the train to the other. You can sit up here and see the horizon in every direction. You can watch the signals change ahead of the train. In fact, many times you can see the train from one end to the other, and that's pretty unique.
While the American Orient Express runs fairly long journeys, other rail operators offer a different sort of dome car adventure. Here are a few. Several American railroads operate dome cars as part of their business car fleets. In 1972, the Alaska Railroad acquired 4 Union Pacific dome cars to enhance their passenger service. Then, over 20 years later, the Alaska Railroad would raise the bar when it came to dome car travel.
The resurgence in dome cars is typically in the tourism market, primarily in Canada and Alaska. The new cars are called Ultra Domes and are made in Colorado, and they're built toward higher capacity, accommodating 70 to 80 guests in the dome sections.
While the idea of a dome car was not new, it took the sharp eye of a man in the cruise industry to bring about the birth of this new type of dome car. Tom Rader shares his story.
Historically, people had taken a 3-day cruise, say, to Skagway or Juneau, and then gotten off and taken an 8-day bus tour through Alaska. And certainly the concept of getting off of a gorgeous cruise ship and onto a bus for 8 days was pretty foreign to many of the visitors. What that meant was that very few of them really did it. And so typically we would take 10 or 12% of the passengers off the ship to go see the interior. Our idea was that first you wouldn't have to take the bus, and secondly, once you got to Anchorage, you would be able to take a train for 2 or 3 days and see the spectacular interior. We did that the first year using the Alaska Railroad's half-dome cars, and as we were standing at the gate one morning and 2 70-year-old ladies were elbowing each other to see who could get out the fastest to get in the only dome car on the train of 26 seats, I said, you know, we should have our own private cars. So we made a deal with the Alaska Railroad, which was then owned by the federal government and was administered by the Federal Railroad Administration, to pull our own private cars behind the Alaska Railroad.
It became evident that no one in the country knew how to build the quality and the luxury that Tom envisioned. First, he started by refurbishing used dome cars. This was the beginning of a new dome car era. Some have described the dome cars that resulted as legendary cruise ships on steel wheels. For the new double-deck dome cars, Tom pioneered and developed new glass that would offer unparalleled views for every passenger. Like many things, it's easier said than done. Tom Rader explains how.
We've spent the better part of a decade and a half doing our own research and development in the manufacture of a piece of glass that would be sophisticated enough to reject solar. We've kind of peaked in the last 6 or 7 years with a piece of glass that's really 3 unique pieces of bent glass that are laminated together with 5 plastic interlayers in them. And those 5 plastic interlayers start with a rare earth metal coated piece of PET, polyethylene, which is a very strong plastic, that reflects about half of the solar, 30 to half depending on the range that you're talking about. And then inside that we have various other reflective and absorptive layers. So that in the end we reject about 66% of all the solar.
The last dome car built for an American railroad was back in the late 1950s. With the demand of cruise and tour passengers in the Rockies and Alaska, a new design for a dome car was needed that offered bigger windows and more comfort and convenience. It's ironic that the new dome cars, both single-level and now those of the double-deck design, are being built in Colorado, the very state where the idea of the original dome car concept was envisioned. New dome cars are again traveling in majestic mountain scenery on the Rocky Mountaineer in Canada.
Our passion, our absolute passion in this company and that can sound cliche, is service. I mean, it really is what we pride ourselves on. What we try and create is the atmosphere that the onboards and everybody on this train, everybody actually involved with the entire company, is saying, how can we make this the most amazing experience for our guests? How can we knock the socks off our guests? How can we exceed our guests' expectations? There are so many people that are coming here from very, very long distances. And this really is the trip of a lifetime for them, to be able to come to Canada, to go through the Rockies by train.
In Alaska, the newest version of the Dome car was introduced in 2005 for the Alaska Railroad. However, there was a new twist to the Dome car experience for these passengers.
We were trying to figure out what we could do to set ourselves apart. And in one of those meetings, we talked about the open platforms on the lower deck of our Aurora car, and what a wonderful thing that would be. So we just asked if we could raise that deck up to the second level.
This car, as you could see, has some very unique features, and I think our number one selling point is the open-air platform in the rear of the car. This is the only car at this time that has the upper-level viewing platform, and really it's the best seat in the entire train. You have a great opportunity to take photos from an open-air deck, looking out at the scenery, and being at the level that it is, it presents a fabulous place to capture the photographs for your trip.
The Alaska Railroad operated standard Dome cars for many years. Then in 2005, as Susie Kiger has just explained, they embarked on a new concept. Pat Gamble, president of the Alaska Railroad, gives the reasons why the new Dome cars were put into service.
It started out as a food service improvement project, and when we saw the capacity we could get into the kitchen and still had all this room, we got the idea that, you know, the face of our railroad is passenger service, and we couldn't think of any better way than to exhibit a first-class service in a first-class piece of equipment like this. We married them up, and we have what we have today on this beautiful day, and the people are just loving it.
Third door down, we've got B, C, and D.
The process of planning and designing the new double-deck domes evolved over a 2-year period. To capture the spirit of Alaska, great attention was given to the detail of the interior design. Susie Kiger elaborates.
The elegance of this car, as you can see, is really very special. The local designer, Kathy Kerr, helped us with the interior design, and her concept was to bring back the classic rail cars from the past, and with that she incorporated some of the natural elements of the scenery with the garnets and the clouds. The seatbacks themselves, you can see the cloud patterns, the northern lights and stars and mountains. And in the dining car, she found local artist Aisha Gilbert to help us with the panels that you see in the dining car, with capturing the scenery along the rail belt. These reverse glass panels really tells the story of the scenery of the rail belt. Rivers, the Aurora Borealis, the flowers, and all the scenery that you see along this route.
During a period of 6 decades, railroad dome cars have evolved from a single-style mini-dome in 1945 to full-length domes to today's double-deck full-length domes. Dome cars are on the verge of evolving again, offering a land cruise experience similar to that of a cruise ship. Elegant fabrics, tufted leather, along with wood veneers and luxurious carpeting are what the future dome car may look like. Suites and mini-suites could be available, along with double-deck entertainment and dining cars. A luxurious glass-domed lounge would create a cruise-like atmosphere with a gracious mezzanine overlooking a lower-level piano bar. Fond memories of Union Pacific's famous dome diners would be rekindled with new, spacious dome dining cars that allow guests to enjoy ever-changing scenery as they dine. Time will tell if these new concept dome cars will ply the rails. It's safe to say, with worldwide travelers demanding higher levels of service, that the dome car will continue to be a desired feature on passenger trains of the future. America and Canada have always showcased their best scenery by train. From wide open plains to soaring mountains, from thundering, roaring rivers to gentle flowing streams, through rain or shine, winter or summer, the view from a railroad dome car has never been matched. It is indeed dome car magic.
And there y'all have it. What an amazing program. The dome car is a really cool piece of equipment in railway history. I have not had the chance to ride in one, but I've been inside of a couple. And yes, the view from up there is truly amazing. It's like you're on top of the world. If you get a chance to ride in a dome car, enjoy it. It is a very unique experience you will remember. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this video. So until next time, please be safe around trains. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment. And remember, God loves us. Happy rails, guys, and see y'all next time.